All right, so we're here for our first in-person interview for Students of the Game with new Richmond strength and conditioning coach, Andrew Lysy. Said that correctly, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So Andrew, a little background on Andrew. Andrew is a currently strength and conditioning coach at RVA Athletes. He just moved to Richmond a few weeks ago from New Jersey. He's a former Cressy sports performance intern, so you'll see that we'll get into Eric Cressy a little bit more today and a lot of what Andrew does in his everyday life, his own training, program writing, and just the way he goes about himself is clearly just like Eric if you listen to his podcast or follow him on social media. Andrew was a former director of strength and conditioning for Be First Performance, so he was essentially in a way co-directing and helping running his own gym in New Jersey at age 23, correct?
Yeah, 23, 24, yeah.
Okay. He was a pitcher at Rowan University in New Jersey.
Yep.
And Andrew's worked with professional baseball and football players, college, high school, middle school athletes. He's done plenty of rehabs, PT type work, and much more. So you'll see on the website, we'll go into a little bit more of Andrew's coursework. We'll go into a little bit more of what he's studying on his own right now. We'll get into that today. We're going to get into a lot of different training type questions that I think are really interesting and can help athletes, coaches, parents at all different levels. And we're going to get into, of course, some of Andrew's background, some of the guys he's worked with, and we'll see where else this conversation takes us. So I guess we can start here. If there's any other did I miss any introduction stuff that you'd want people to know or anything like that about you that you want before we get into things?
Nah, I mean, something cool that I had a chance to do as well, besides just working with baseball, football, and high school athletes, was I had a chance to work with an Olympic gold medalist, so Amanda Elmore. She was a rower. She won gold in the Olympics 2016 in Rio in Brazil. So I actually got to hold the gold medal, wear it, and take a picture. So it was pretty cool, but that's just another little tidbit.
When did you train her?
So she actually came, she had a SI joint issue, and she was actually with us from September to November. She still works out with the co-director that I was with, who was another former Cressy Intern. His name's Connor Brew. He runs his own gym, Thunder and Lightning Performance in New Jersey. So she actually still works out there with him and gets programmed by him. So again, I feel like it's pretty cool. You know,
yeah.
Not many people can say that they worked with the gold medal.
Oh yeah, and hopefully many more.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's one thing that we'll get into with training. There's definitely a question about that. Is there sport-specific training? Is there not? I'm sure from someone who's teaching strength and conditioning, for you to get access into every single sport must be the best possible thing.
Right.
So let's dive into, before we get off topic there, let's go into Eric Cressy, baseball, and honing in on that a little bit right here. So first, my understanding of Cressy's interns is that once you finish the program, you're almost in a way an encyclopedia, a walking encyclopedia is how I've described you, of Eric's knowledge. Pretty much goes hand in hand in every single post I see with him on social media. And then the way you explain it. And I could not agree more with this assumption. So do you feel that you've obtained and mastered pretty much all the material that he tries to pass down to his interns? Do you feel that in a way you've mastered what he knows? Obviously he's always continuing to learn just like yourself, but do you feel that in a way you have the same kind of knowledge and then you can have the same kind of impact on athletes that he has?
So I would say, like, in a sense, yes, because the way he sets up his program is before you go to the internship. So when you go there, you're a full-time coach. You basically stand on the floor. You're coaching all of the athletes. You're running them through their program. But 10 weeks before, you have kind of like a handbook that you have to go over and learn. And each week is a progression of the next. And I think I was watching close to 80, 100 hours of videos from week 1 to week 10. So he gives you a really good understanding for just really, really good movement. What I say, I know as much as him, no shot. He's one of the smartest men I've ever met. It's really funny. I started to listen to more podcasts with strength coaches, some big time guys. Bill Hartman, who is one of the big PRI advocates. He's a physical therapist in iFast. Mike Robertson, who's the co-founder of iFast. Luca Hosovar, who's out in Seattle. And they actually all credit Eric for a lot of the stuff that they've learned. And I didn't realize how big Eric was in the industry just outside of baseball, but he is very, very influential in that manner. So I would say that their internship gives you a really, really good base and understanding for really, really good movement, understanding exercise prescription, understanding how to assess and correct. And then from there, you're obviously on your own, you're continuing to learn and you're continuing to progress from there. But I mean, the way that Eric said it is, when you become an intern, you officially know more than he did when he started. So at 23 years old, when Eric started, I think he was 26 when he opened up his own place, 25, 26. So if you think about it, where I was when I was 23 and where he was when he started, in a sense, because of what he knew and because of what he allowed me to learn, I knew more than he did back then. So obviously,
Pretty cool.
The goal is to get and be better than Eric. I just don't think that's actually possible. He is literally the encyclopedia of knowledge. Like, he is the smartest man I ever met in my entire life. I got a chance to work with him twice, like face to face. So I sat in on one of his assessments. Was a guy that, he was in Florida, so it was a guy that drove down from North Carolina. Chronic neck issues, older man, never ever played a sport in his life. And it seemed like Eric knew exactly what he wanted to do with that guy before the guy even stepped on the field. Or, I'm sorry, in the gym. So Eric is seen...
Just from watching his body.
From taking a look at what he moved. It's incredible. Like, we're sitting across, like, I'm here, the guy is sitting next to me, he's getting assessed, and Eric's across the table, and I'm just staring at Eric like, he doesn't even really need to do this assessment because he already knows what's going on, because he's seen so many athletes and seen so many people and helped so many people. So that was pretty cool. And then a shoulder seminar, he worked with him in New York City this past summer, and just to see like how well he knows this information, it's just like absolutely incredible. But he's been doing it for such a long time. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's funny because my first day with you was I invited you to come throw with me on my college or come watch me throw on my college campus. You said judgment-free zone. We're gonna do this. I'm gonna try not to say anything, and I wanted you to give me some feedback. I want feedback immediately as soon as possible. I don't want to waste any time getting better that I possibly can. And it's crazy because just from moving around and seeing a few things, everything that you picked out that was wrong with me then were most of it things that I speculated all along, just don't know how to fix. And then once we actually went in and I started training with you, did my assessment, pretty much went hand in hand with every hypothesis that you had from that first. Your style of coaching, now, it's hard when you went away, like Eric, I believe he knows everything. I mean, side note, actually, this is what I was wanted to say before. I've never met you and another former teammate and a friend of mine as well who trained with Eric, was invited to do the internship with Eric and decided to keep playing baseball and going back to school, and he's not going that route anymore. But both people that I know that have trained under Cressy are the two most knowledgeable people in terms of strength and conditioning. And I don't mean writing a program. I mean, I've met plenty of people who can write an amazing program, but what I've noticed that you guys can do is you can tell the difference between weakness, tightness, soreness, everything, and then you customize based on that. So in my mind, my workouts are my own, are very random. I just, whatever I'm feeling that day, whatever I'm thinking, whatever I think I need to work. But I've never seen a program written so well where it caters to the specific athlete, whether that's and whether that's you're tight here, so we're going to loosen you, or you're weak here, so we're going to strengthen that, and I don't want you stretching that and becoming more loose than you already are. And I've never seen it paired together so well, and I'm sure that's things that you've learned exactly from Eric. So back to that question.
So let me go with that. So the one thing that Eric and his staff, so not only was I with Eric, so I was an intern in Florida in summer of 2016. So I worked with...
This is in his Jupiter
facility. So not only was I with Eric, but I was also with Shane Rye, who is the massage therapist and the co-founder of Cressy. He's actually Noah Syndergaard's massage therapist, and if you see the articles that Noah is in and the videos that he talks about Shane, Brian Kaplan, who is another co-founder, he is one of the head coaches for the FTB Rockets, one of the smartest pitching minds I've ever met in the entire world. So those are other two coaches that had a big influence on me, not just Eric. But one thing that they really, really preach is understanding anatomy, because when I went to the fall seminar in Massachusetts this year, and one thing that really resonated with me was what Eric said is, how do you know what the body is supposed to do if you don't know what the body is? So it's like understanding that everybody moves differently, but in reality, movement is movement. And if I don't know what movement is going on here, what muscles are supposed to do how do I really know what I'm doing? And one of the coaches, who was a former coach and then came back and talked, he said, when I got to Cressy Sports Performance, Eric looked at me and he said, "Do you know all 17 muscles that connect to the scapula?" And he goes, "No." And he goes, "Well, then how do you expect to write a good program for an elite baseball player that's trying to throw 100 miles an hour and stay healthy?" So it was really funny. I didn't even do any studying. I went back the next day with my co-director, who was another Cressy intern, and I was like, I know all 17 muscles, and I named them all there, and it kind of gave me more confidence to say, okay, well, maybe what I'm doing is at that elite level, and I do know enough about anatomy because I did study. So just a side note, Eric did say, how can you know what the body is supposed to do if you don't know what the body is? And that really opened up my eyes, like, holy moly, like, that is a really, really good statement to say, because it's true.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. If good programming, well, it's all about what exactly you need to do and exactly what your body is doing. Everybody's body is doing something different, but that anatomy behind it just changes the game.
Yeah, and I will also say that Andrew's trying to get me to learn about anatomy a little bit here. I haven't done as much research as I should, but I mean, you're teaching me on the fly. You also gave me your notebook where I can kind of study that a little bit and try to understand what I'm doing. But the little bit that I've retained, I mean, it really does help knowing what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to feel. And that's just not one muscle. That's whenever you're doing something, that's the tightness and that's the activation in your glutes, your hamstrings, your core, your shoulder blade, all of that at once. It's not just one thing like we're used to. So it really does help to know everything that you want working. So I'm sure we'll touch back on Eric throughout the course of this morning. So if there's anything that we've left out that you want to throw in about him, feel free to. But I want to kind of segue in. Now, you told me that I find this really interesting and something that I think people would love to know where you started. The first person that you wrote a program for, they are now in what level of the Angels organization?
So he's projected to go to AA this year. He started in rookie ball last year. He was in the Orem Owls, which I don't even know. Maybe Utah, I think Orem is. So his name is Denny Brady.
So where was he when you started, and tell us how you got to where he is now. Cool. Anything interesting along the way?
It's really funny. When I first got to New Jersey, I was in a facility called Game Time Performance. So it was a gigantic 30,000 square foot facility. It had baseball cages. It had a gigantic turf. It had a gym in the back, and basically anybody could come in. You could pay a certain amount of money to use the gym. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to establish at the business that if we're going to be back there, everybody's going to work with us. So of course, when you come in, you can't just say, okay, this is how you got to do it. You kind of got to build that resume and build that business. So I kind of just hung out in the gym and tried to just talk to people and teach them and learn. And I was walking around and I saw a kid, Denny Brady, and I didn't really know him. I kind of knew of him because he played for Gallagher Baseball, which is where I played. My brother played there as well. So I kind of knew of him, but I never actually met him in person. And I was just watching him work out, and I was just like, holy moly, like everything that I learned from Cressy Sports Performance and that internship and Eric and Cap and Shane, I was like, it just doesn't seem like he's doing the most optimal thing to help him out as a pitcher. So I knew he was a good pitcher. I knew he was threw really, really hard. I knew he had a crazy injury history. So I went over to him and said, hey, I'm Andrew. I'm a former Cressy intern. I work with Eric and the staff in Florida. I was like, can I just make a suggestion? And he's like, yeah, right away. So I put him to the table. I ran him through like a short little assessment. I told him to pick his leg up. I pushed it straight down. And he goes, dude, you don't use your legs when you pitch. Did you know that? He's like, I knew that. How'd you know that? So I said, just based off the assessment, I could kind of tell he didn't use his legs. So then I brought him in for an assessment. We kind of talked about injury history, where he was at, and he gave me a little bit more background information. So Denny was a kid that threw really hard out of high school. He was up to 90 every once in a while, but it was inconsistent, had a crazy amount of elbow injuries. Signed a scholarship to go to ECU, went there, pitched about 14 innings, had about 12 walks. Didn't really like the way things were going there. Went and played in I believe it was the New England League, Newport Gulls, and he did all right, but then he had an elbow issue. So he had a sprained UCL. So he transferred into Mercer County Community College, which is one of the most prestigious community colleges in the country, especially in New Jersey. They've been going to the World Series, I want to say like 3 of the past 5 years, draft picks every single year. A kid that I grew up with, who's now a 40-man roster on the A's, throws about 100. He went to Mercer, so they're just very, very prestigious. So Denny transferred in there to kind of expedite the process of getting drafted. So we sat down and talked. Like I said, he had a crazy elbow history, shoulders, hips, everything, lower back. And he was like 86 to 88 in the fall. because of this elbow issue, so it wasn't really consistent throwing. It was kind of here and there. We just kind of talked about what I do and what he's looking for, and it was like almost immediately that he just bought in. So it was really funny. I look back at his first program, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. How much better I've gotten at writing programs, but how much of that program influenced him. We got after it. He was in every single day for close to 10 months. So he went from 86, 88 with a sprained UCL to pitching 90 innings in Mercer. He had a .96 ERA. He gave up 6 walks in that entire time period, and he had over 100 strikeouts. He ended up getting drafted in the 7th round at 20 years old, throwing 96. And he ended up playing for the Orem Owls, and now he's going back to spring training, and he's actually in the beginning of. So he was like a top prospect. This will be his first full year. So he's a top prospect right now, and he's had to go to spring training early, and it's pretty cool to see. When he went out, he kind of came back, and he felt not 100%. His elbow and his shoulder started bothering him again. So almost immediately he came back to me, and we kind of worked back together. So I started to write his programs for this past year as well. So he was with me from October all the way through the day of the draft. Went to play pro ball, came back, and then came back, same thing, October, November, December, and then a little bit of January. So we got 3.5 programs in. I'm writing his program right now for pro ball as well, which is pretty cool. So I have him doing a little pre-work to get his body feeling good before he wakes up, or when he wakes up, before he goes to the field, and then something at night to kind of reset his body, make him feel even better. And the same thing, like you said, with you learning about anatomy is, I told Denny, I said, dude, the best way to go about it is just understanding your body. So I actually told him about a book about anatomy. It's called Trail Guide to the Human Body that I really, really like, and he's starting to read it. So he's starting to understand more about his body and what he's supposed to feel, what he's supposed to do. He asks a lot of questions. Again, the more questions you ask, the more you're going to find out. So it's not just, okay, I'm going to do it because they said so. It's I'm going to do it, and I'm going to understand why. So I feel like Denny was really, really intelligent. He's one of the smartest kids, I think, about understanding what he should be doing that I've ever met. He's very, very down to earth. He loves getting after it. He picks up a crap ton of weight. I think he's 6 foot, 215 pounds, and he was split squatting, Bulgarian split squatting over close to 300 pounds. Trap bar deadlifting close to 500. So
you hear those numbers, please don't look at the content you've seen Matthew and I post, because that makes me feel terrible.
But no, so he got after it. He bought in. I think the one thing with him was, I really cared for what he should have been doing. I think that's what the Cressy model taught me was, you meet everybody and like, do this because this is what worked for me. Do this because this is what the internet says. Do this because this is what pro ball says. And I think I was like almost the first person to really say, do this because this is what Denny's body says. Yeah, and it like really opened up his eyes. And I kid you not one time in my close to year and a half program for him has he ever questioned me. He's always said, oh, I love it. I feel good. And I understand why I'm doing it. So it was me saying, let's do this, him saying, this is what I need to be doing, and then we picked that happy medium and I work together with him. I want to help him write his programs. I don't want to just write them, because if I just write them, he's never going to learn. So it's the same concept of, I want him to understand what I know, because in reality, if he knows what I know, he should feel good most of the time, and he should be able to perform at a maximal level. Yeah.
So. And then when he's sent away to professional, or when he's sent away to play his season in the spring, the more he knows about anatomy, the more he knows what should be working and why, the better he can do it when he's on his own, not with you holding his hand, or when he's in the Angels weight room and there's 2 strength coaches for 30 guys or something like that. Right. The more he knows what should be working, the better. And that all goes into, to me, investing in yourself as an athlete. I mean, there's been so many times where I've had to check myself where I think I work my ass off and I think I'm one of the hardest working people out there. Then there's something new that you can always do to invest in yourself. And it helps me always realize there's more that I can do. I mean, if you'd asked me even a year or 2 ago if I thought that studying anatomy would help me as a baseball player, I would say you're crazy. But
I'm right there with you.
And,
and it changes.
And it sure as hell changes. It's very important. So actually, this made me think of something else, and I'm sure Eric has this same situation. What is it like for you now? Because you've had players play off season, then go back to play. So and now I've trained plenty of pitchers before, like just one-on-one lessons. Now that I'm with a group and I'm with them 3 days a week consistently, I'm like nervous for what happens when they go play in high school. Like I've only known these kids for a month and a half. It's gonna end up being 2 or 3 months. But when you're training someone, it's 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. You're probably going to watch them throw. Maybe you're going to see them throw pens to help out with all that. What do you feel like when they leave? Because like I know that when I hear these kids are going to throw in their first high school game, or when I hear from their coach that they're going to throw in front of a scout for the first time in the spring or something. Like, how do you feel when you send a guy away? Because obviously you want them to succeed as much as you want yourself to succeed.
Right. No. Yeah. I mean, you definitely want them to do as well as they can, and if they believe and buy into the process of getting prepared the most optimal way, I think that they should be fine. The only thing that I kind of always combat with is, like I said, is we're always teaching these individuals what's specific for them, but then you have the coaches who just want everybody to do that teamwork type thing. So it's always hard to combat, hey, this is what you should be doing compared to this is what everybody else is doing. Mm-hmm. And then always going back to, my goal is to make sure that the body moves as well as possible. When we throwing is the fastest movement in all of sports. It's also one of the worst movement in all sports. So I'm always trying to combat what they're doing to throw and what I'm trying to do with lifting. So what I see is, if we get a good 5 to 6 months of lifting in, they'll feel really, really good for the beginning of the season. And then towards the middle of the season, they'll start to kind of wind down because that strength isn't there anymore. So you throw harder, but you lose weight. That's a really good way to get into it. So
as the season goes on, you start to bite your nails.
Right, and I'm like, what's going on? As I said, Denny felt $1 million when he was with us, and he went to pro ball and didn't have the individualized attention. And next thing you know, he started to get a little bit sore. His elbow would bother him, his shoulder would bother him, and he didn't really know how to react. So that's why I really think it's important to not only get after it in the off season, but to maintain that strength and maintain the mobility and maintain the understanding from movement during the season. That's the most important part. I mean, if I lift for 6 months and then completely stop and just throw, obviously I'm going to get hurt and I'm going to lose it.
So I think we all know now that you need to do something in season besides play baseball. But how a high-level player, high-level college guy, pro guy, how many days a week should they be doing some kind of training? Not going out to the field early for BP and doing your moving, yoga, mobility, all that kin stretch on your own. Not that. That is an everyday thing.
Right.
In terms of getting in the weight room, going through a workout, how many days a week do you see that for a relief pitcher and then for a starter? Right. You don't have to tell us why or anything like that. I mean, that'll all
go through. I would say it depends on the age, a lot of different variables, background, training history, injury history, what their body looks like, how long they train in the off season. But I would say typically you want to get at least 2 full body workouts in per
high
week.
Level guy here. We're talking college, pro.
So two full body, maybe 3 full body. And again, depends on how you feel. I know, like I said, Denny loves to get after it. So when I write Denny's programs, when we were running him in season last year, it was, okay, well, after I work out, I want to just murder my legs. And then after I pitch, right, so the next day after he worked out, he wants to murder his legs. And then the following day, it was, okay, well, let's get my shoulders moving well, so we'll do some types of rows, some type of overhead presses. And then we'll maybe do like some movement.
So he's a starter.
Right, so then he was a starter, yep. So, and then we'll go from there. So I think it depends on the person, the individual, a lot of different variables. But I would say minimally at least 2 days a week, just understanding good movement, right? So bicep curls, not going to help you.
What about the day after you pitch? You want to get, or the night of, day after? Can you hit, I know this is, bicep curls are as superficial as it gets compared to what we're doing, but day after you pitch, can you do a basic flush day where you're hitting some rows, you're hitting some hammer curls, maybe not necessarily everything that we do, but some kind of flush just to
yeah, absolutely. Yep. I would say specifically it should be full body because you use your entire body to pitch. So absolutely. I mean, whatever, just do something. That's what it comes down to. Try to maintain that weight. Mm-hmm. Try to maintain your strength. You're not trying to gain in season. If you think about it, lifting and throwing, they're virtually the same thing. You're tearing your body apart and waiting for it to recover and build it back up. So if I throw 100 pitches and then, sit down for about an hour, then 40 minutes later I go and kill my body with lifting, I'm probably going to be worse than I would be better. So understanding how to recover, how to learn about nutrition, how to understand what you should be doing, and then going from there. So again, if Denny was working out 6 days a week for the past 5 and 6 months, and he wants to continue with a 4-day program where we're just continuing to maintain that weight, that's fine. But again, if you're working out 3 days a week in the off season, then you probably shouldn't try to do 5 in the in season, because you're just trying to maintain. You're trying to maintain everything that you built up for.
You're not getting stronger.
No, you're not getting stronger because you're throwing. So like I said, you're breaking your body down, and you're breaking your body down more. So all your lifting should be recovery lifting.
Yeah. And that's why you always hear he talks about the grind and the gains. Now, I wouldn't say training for baseball is necessarily a grind, because I think it's fun and I love doing it. But right there stresses the importance of the off season even more. Now another question that I want to ask, because this is not something I had prepared, it's something that just popped up. So you just talked about starters. We don't need to go into relievers right now, but we can have that conversation one-on-one when we're writing programs for me in my season. But what about high school kids, middle school kids? When I was playing 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I was playing anywhere from 90 to 120 games a year.
Right.
Obviously, training, strength and conditioning, that stuff we didn't care. We played as much as possible. But when you break into the big diamond, you get used to the big diamond, you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. What should they be doing here? Ideally, realistically, of course, we'd love to have them in there a few days a week, manually stretching them, manually helping them with stabilization, something like that. But what's realistic and ideal for a kid like that? A kid who's playing on maybe 1 or 2 different travel teams during the summer, they're playing a healthy schedule of games. What would you like to see? Because that's a trend that I think we're going to start seeing, is kids are going to be playing maybe a little bit less in the spring and summer or fall, and then pairing that with more time with someone like you.
Well, yeah, you'd hope so. One of the things that I always used to try to do was change mechanics, and one thing I realized that you really can't do is you can't change mechanics. You have to change the way that the body moves in the gym. Get him stronger, get him this, get him that. So I would say, again, ideally, you want to continue to maintain and try to get in once or twice a week. And if you don't know what to do, ask. So, like I said, I'm in Virginia right now. Denny's in Arizona. I have a bunch of kids in New Jersey. I continue to write programs for them. Mm-hmm. So it's accountability. The kids that I've seen that have the most success is when I write them a program, I'll send them the exercise database. They look it up, all their exercises, and then I don't really hear from them until the end of the week. And I say, hey, how'd your week go? What do you feel? But again, there's always something to do. There's always a way to go about it. You just have to understand what you want to do and how you're going to go about it. So, for example, if there's a kid that's on your team that's from Northern Virginia, it takes an hour to get here, I would rather him do an off-site program than do something on his own where he doesn't know what he's doing, because he could get hurt. And again, this is what I study, this is what I do for a living, so I think I could help him out a little bit more than he could help himself out. But just something in season, maybe once or twice a week, under good guidance. Could be programming off-site, could be programming in season. I know it's hard to get there, but again, if I were to do it all over again, because I was in the same boat, I pitched a crap ton, I threw as hard as I tried to, but I didn't understand the movement. I ended up blowing out my elbow when I was 19, so I had a beautiful little scar. I don't know if you can see it, I had Tommy John, but I didn't do any of that stuff because all I thought about was, if I want to play baseball, I have to get better by throwing a baseball.
Yeah.
You get better by lifting. Throwing a baseball is natural. Not necessarily natural, but we've been doing it our entire lives. We know how to throw. We get locked up in these patterns. We don't know how to move. We don't know how to lift weights. We just don't know how to pick up weights and move fast, but we know how to throw a baseball fast. So one of the coaches at Cressy, John O'Neill, said, if the fastest thing that you do is throwing a baseball, you're probably going to get hurt. So if you can't pick up a heavy weight fast, or if you can't throw a medicine ball fast, but you throw a baseball really fast, you're probably going to get hurt. So you always have to try to combat that.
So interesting.
Right? It's a good theory.
Crazy. Yeah. How many guys do you see when you're younger, these POs, kids that come to play for a travel team that are 6'2", 6'3", they're 14, 15, they're humming mid-80s, upper 80s, but they might not play another sport. They can't hit, they can't run to first base, they can't pinch run. All they can do is throw a baseball. What happens to those guys? Those are the ones that probably get hurt. Yeah. So that's really interesting. that just, the light bulb again went off right there for me.
Surround yourself with really awesome, intelligent people, and you'll realize how far you can get.
This is going to dive into training. Do you want to talk about I got two things. I want to go into how you tie in your experience and what you've done as a player. You've touched on all that a little bit already, and then how you tie that into your style of coaching, how you train people, and I want you to tell us about PRI a little bit and the weird videos that I posted recently with me breathing into a balloon, making weird faces and all these weird positions and all that. So those are the two things I want to hear about you as a player and how that impacts your coaching and your training on kids, and tell us about PRI, which is postural restoration. Yes.
Yeah, cool. So talk about a little bit about me, baseball, training, and all that good stuff. So like I said previously, I was somebody that went to a bunch of different pitching coaches to just try to maximize throwing as hard as I can. I didn't really understand the weightlifting concept. I didn't really do that when I was in high school. You live and you learn. That's why I do what I do now, just to show the importance of it. So threw kind of hard, didn't really know where the ball was going. Went to college, put on a bunch of weight. Ended up throwing 87, 88 my freshman year. Did pretty well at Rowan University. And then sophomore, junior, senior year, my elbow just killed. So I had Tommy John after my freshman year, May 2012. Sat out the sophomore year, junior, senior, and then super senior year. My elbow really still bothered me. My shoulder bothered me a little bit, my lower back. So, like I said, going back to what really impacted me was when I'm working with all these people when I was younger and working with all these coaches, they said, hey, this is what you need to do because this is what I did. Hey, this is what you should do because this is what the guys for this pro team told me to do. And this is what worked for me. Or I'm a left-handed pitcher, but you're a right-handed pitcher, and I'm 5-something, and you're 6'1", so do this because it works for me and helped me get there. So I just tried to do that as much as I could, and I just kept getting frustrated because I just couldn't do what they were asking me to, and I felt like I was working as hard as you said you were, and I was grinding, and I just wasn't seeing the results.
Yeah.
I was almost like getting really mad at myself. And then, like I said, my elbow started to hurt. My junior year, I was up to 90, 91. I had some interest from some professional teams, so I got a chance to play summer ball in a bunch of different areas, and I went to Florida to end up working as a client with Eric and the staff down there. So in 2015, I went down there and I walked in the gym for my assessment. I remember, I kid you not, that was the most excited I've ever been to do anything because I knew how prestigious Eric was. I started studying his material when I had Tommy John because I knew it wasn't my elbow. I knew it was something else. And everybody said, let's rehab your elbow. When I went to physical therapy, all I did was rehab my elbow. When I was with the athletic trainers, all I did was rehab my elbow. And it would never work because my elbow was hurt. So I was like, there's something else going on here. So when I went to Cressy and I looked in the gym, I'm like, holy moly, this is gorgeous. This is beautiful. This is exactly what I want to do. And it seemed like for the first time in my life, somebody really cared about Andrew and what Andrew should be doing compared to what everybody else says that they did and what works for them. So it was more of an individualized program. And that's the first time I was like, holy moly, I feel amazing.
Which I want to say, it's not a bad thing to have people try to tell you to do what worked for them, because if it worked for them, it might work for you. And if they're a higher level guy, if it worked for them, I believe in a way that's someone you want to try to copy or throw in a way. We might have a little bit of disagreement on that, but though they're not trying to do that because they're saying I throw this way, so this is the only way to throw this way. This is what they know that works. So those people are simply just trying to help. And now we're getting more of a correct scientific view on things. So there's no right or wrong, I believe, to that. I just want to throw that in there. But it can definitely push you in the wrong way because no two bodies work the same.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's 50,000 ways to skin a cat, and there's one optimal way to skin a cat as fast as you can. So I feel like just when I went to Cressy, I worked out there for 2 months, and it just seemed like they had all the answers that I was ever looking for. Oh, I feel this here. Oh, well, do this, do that, and holy moly, I feel that. So it was the attention to detail and the attention to care for me, and it was like I said, it was a family. It was the first time I ever really felt like somebody really cared about Andrew in baseball and lifting and feeling good compared to just, okay, well, this is what's going to be best for you because at the end of the day, I'm going to use you as a resume builder. So to me, that was the most important thing. And I think that's one thing that I learned from the internship too was it was all about family. I met some of the most awesome people that I continue to talk to today, not only interns, but people that I work with. One of my best friends from that internship, Michael Saylor, shout out to my boy. He's at Valdosta State right now, and he's shoving it. And he was one of the most impactful people in my life, and it wasn't anything to do with exercise. It was just how awesome of a person he was. So we bought into each other, and he was at Cressy this entire offseason getting after it in Massachusetts. He was there for like 6 to 8 months. He just got after it, and it was just that family type thing. So it was people really, really cared for me as an individual, and I think that's something that I bring to the table with what I do now is, I talk to my co-director Connor all the time, a former co-director, and I'm like, dude, we could potentially be the biggest impacts in these athletes' career because we care that much about them. I mean, the coaches can care, but how hard is it to care with 30 people on the court at once or field at once? It's really, really hard. So, I want to make sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing. I want to make sure that they feel it where they're supposed to feel it. I want to make sure that they understand that this isn't just about lifting, it's about becoming an adult, understanding how to do this, understanding how to follow a program, and understanding that I really, really care for you more than just lifting.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that really resonated with me was it was just an understanding for, I really, really care for you compared to just this is what you should be doing. So I really was thankful for that, and I think that's one thing that I like to really continue with is just making sure that you understand. Like I said with Luke, the first kid I worked down here with, I wasn't getting paid for as many hours as I was working with him, but I wanted to make sure that he was the best athlete I would ever work with. So I put in all those extra hours, unpaid, but it made an impact on him because he seemed like, okay, next thing you know, we're hanging out, we're going out, we're grabbing food at the bar, and we became a family almost immediately because it was more than just, okay, lifting, it's my job, and then I'll see you later.
Now, I want to use this quote that you said that we have not stopped talking about, or we have not stopped thinking about. Why do you believe, tell us a little bit more about what you meant when you said elite athletes are elite compensators, or they become elite compensators. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? Explain to people who it might not sit the same way as it does with us, because I think that hits the nail on the head right there with why you keep telling me that who are the ones that get hurt? The better pitchers and the ones that throw harder.
Right.
Why?
Well, so I basically, during my assessment, it's joint by joint. It's can you do this? Can you do that? And sometimes I'm like, holy moly! Like, how do you throw so hard? So I take a look at somebody's hips, and we're looking for a certain range of motions. I can feel if it's locked up. I can feel if it's really tight. Sometimes they're so tight, and then I get them in an overhead squat, and they can squat all the way to the ground. I'm like, holy moly, like your body should not be able to do that, but you somehow overcame and found a way to do that. And it's like, that's not good. That's how you get injured, because if you can't control the joint and the range of motion in the joint, or you lack range of motion in the joint, but you can do some crazy motion.
And then you add weight,
and then you add load. Right, yep. So then I think I talked to you about this, but throwing a baseball is the fastest movement in all of sports. And we literally, it's just a game of numbers. I mean, think about, the concept of nobody really says, okay, if I have a really awesome career in my college career, I'm going to get drafted. Everybody says, oh, if I throw 95, I'm going to get picked up. Oh, if I throw 100, I'm going to get picked up. So we're always chasing these numbers and these goals of just trying to throw as hard as we can, but we don't really care how we get there. So if I just get on the mound and I just whip everything out and I just try to throw as hard as I can, in reality, if I continue to do it over and over again, I pattern my body to understand that movement, I could throw strikes with it, even if it's not the most optimal way to go about it. But optimal for baseball is let's just throw as hard as we can, let's throw that number up on the board, and then go from there. So that's why it's really, really important just to understand body control, understand how to move your body, understand how to do certain things with your body, so you don't have to go through those crazy range of motions and freak mechanics, because that is when you get hurt. And that's one thing that I don't really like to chase is those numbers. Like I said, it's all about the process. That number is an outcome. So if I do what I have to do in the off season, that number will be there, and my velocity will be there, and my command will be there. But it's crazy to like really take a look at a body piece by piece and be like, dude, I don't know how you throw so hard, or dude, I don't know how you haven't blown your arm out yet, because that's something that they said to me when I got my assessment when I was there as an athlete was, they're like, and you throw how hard? And I'm like, I was up to 90, and they're like, and how haven't you had crazy arm? I'm like, but I have, so again, we put ourselves in these positions, all in reality just to hit that number, even if it's not the most optimal way for my body to move, because I'm just always trying to chase that crazy number of 95, 96, 97, because that's what makes us money.
And trying to get there by working out, training, lifting the wrong way is most likely not going to get you there.
Right. Unless
you are that extra elite level of compensator. Maybe you can get there for a year or two. 2 or 3 years after that, though, your arm might be... You might be finding yourself on an operating table again. This is actually another thing. We're not going to get into this today, but I think something that we need to eventually release and talk to about people is I want to hear what you think about. We're doing all this explosive training, all this stuff to make us throw harder. Everything that I'm doing when I'm training, I want to throw harder. But we can't forget about command, control, and throwing strikes.
Right.
Not right now, but at some point, I want to hear.
Yeah.
I want to hear how when you do all this stuff, then what happens when you put them on the mound and
Right.
all of that, everything that we've done is out the door, and you forget about that. How do you hone in and throw strikes and still throw the ball with that 110% effort, conviction, intent, everything? So next thing, happy we got to talk about that quote. So when you meet and assess a new athlete, what are you focusing on? What are you looking on? Or what are you focusing in on and what are you looking at most likely? I'm assuming shoulders and hips, or the shoulders, hips, feet, ankles are the main thing. But what do you look at? Like we meet for the first time, or you meet someone like me for the first time, or you meet a 9-year-old kid for the first time. And not including their assessment, what are you looking at?
I would say one of the biggest things again is personality and understanding for where they're at in the growth curve. For example, I take a look at John and I'm like, okay, this kid really wants to understand and learn and know. So I'm gonna relay him more information than I would relay a 14, 15-year-old who's just trying to lift and get stronger. So I think understanding for the person and the individual, not just from a lifting aspect, but from personality aspect, and understanding what their understanding is. You don't want to throw too many cues on them at once, where I can throw many cues at you because you're gonna understand a little bit more. So I like to kind of learn more about their personality and what their goals are and where they are in life, and do they like to learn, or are they just trying to get after it? Do they want to understand, or they're trying to pick up weight? So I think one of the most important things besides the actual assessment is understanding the individual from a personality level and just trying to go from there, because I have a lot of information in my head and I want to relay it to you, but you have to understand each person as an individual, and are they going to be able to understand it? So you don't want to overwhelm them with information, because some people might not be able to react to a bunch of information at once, where others love all the information at once. So understanding what person needs what, not just lifting, but coaching cues and understanding how to execute, I think is really, really important. So I think that's where my assessment comes in. It's not just about how the body moves. It's how fast their mind moves. So programming too. It's if I have a 14-year-old who is really, really smart, really, really elite, but I have a 14-year-old who's kind of slow in the growth curve, and maybe a little bit slower in understanding movement and not even understanding movement, just understanding how to follow a program. I'm gonna give the 14-year-old with better understanding a little bit harder program. I'm going to get the 14-year-old that didn't have that much understanding a little bit easier program. I'm going to coach the 14-year-old way differently with more understanding than I'm going to coach the 14-year-old with little understanding. So it's understanding each person as an individual, again, and how to coach them. Because, again, you want them to be successful. So if I coach each person the same way, that one person might actually feel down. So it's like I saw a picture, one of my favorite pictures, because I just can't stand tests. I was never a good test taker. I have a ton of knowledge. I do a lot of reading, but I can't take tests. And you take a picture. It was in a newspaper. It was a giraffe, an elephant, and a monkey. And it was a teacher behind the desk. And it said, if you judge the giraffe on how well it can climb a tree, it's going to think it's stupid for the rest of its life. So it's the same concept. That monkey can climb the tree as fast as it can, but that doesn't mean that monkey and that giraffe should be taught the exact same way, because they're two completely different animals.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with people. Two people can be two completely different people, understanding, learning. There's so many different ways to learn and understand, so I got to find out exactly which person is what type of learner.
That stresses the importance of the strength coach even more, because you can have all the knowledge in the world that you or Eric might have, but if you can't do that, then you can't train a lot of the kids that are going to be walking through that door.
Right.
So
I think that's one thing that I really take pride in is, again, I can write the best program in the world, but doesn't mean you're doing it right if I'm not watching you. And I think that's another thing that the Cressy Sports Performance team is really, really good at, is understand how to coach, because if you don't know how to coach, you're not going to be good at it, and understanding what each individual should be doing. So I really took pride in how well I can coach. My goal was to make you understand exactly what I'm doing in less than one sentence. I remember when I sat down with Eric for my my mid-season, my internship review, he was like, Yeah, a lot of good information, but you gotta learn how to relay it better, and you give a lot of information. Yeah, it was actually really funny. But again, this is 2 years ago, so I've gotten better because I've wanted to get better. But there's a time where I just was relaying way too much information. The kids were looking at me and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. So it's short, simple cues to get the fastest results and the best results.
Yeah. So next, let's dive into the training stuff a little bit more here.
Cool.
So where do we want to start? So let's go into this first. For kids who don't have access, they either cannot afford it, they can't drive an hour and a half a day.
Right.
Andrew's boss, Glenn, who we'll talk a little bit more about later on, we hope to sit down and talk with him in the future. He told me for every 20 minutes you sit down or sit in the car, forget which it was, you need to do 4 minutes of mobility. It's like, holy crap. So then what happens when a kid doesn't have anything? There's a pitcher that I'm training that I want to go to Andrew. He lives an hour and a half away from Andrew. Is that worth it? I don't know. So they can't afford an off-site program. They can't afford someone who can't afford to pay for a trainer, someone who can't drive to see a trainer, someone who just simply doesn't have time. Whatever the case may be, they're on their own and they want to become the best baseball player that they can be or whatever in their respective sport. What do?
So I think a good outlet is social media and blogs and the internet. Like I said, in 2012, Eric was big, but he wasn't as big as he was now. And I just remember Googling good baseball strength and conditioning programs.
Yeah.
And that's where I came across Eric and started reading about him. So there are so many coaches that put out amazing content on social media. Eric puts out blog posts almost daily. He wakes up really early and starts writing his blog posts like 5 a.m. So just, again, understanding what you should be doing, start studying your body, it's your body, and just go from there. I mean, I think that's something where I need to do a better job is posting more content for, people that don't necessarily have the funds or the time to go out there, because I have the knowledge and I need to start spreading it more.
Yeah.
But I think social media is good. Eric Cressy, John O'Neill, Frank Duffy, Nancy Newell. There's just so many people, Mike Reinhold. Yeah. There's so many people in this industry that put out amazing content daily, and I think those people are important to follow, because even if it's not individualized like you're doing, you're still going to get a lot of really good information to help you in the long term.
Yeah, but okay, now I've done that for years. I believe I have a great baseball network. I have learned so much from people all over the place, and I kind of incorporate into what I do in baseball. But a lot of the new stuff that I learned comes from following Eric on social media, following the Prehab guys on social media, following King Stretch, following all baseball PDS, all these different places, seeing what they do and kind of putting them together and coming up with my own. That's kind of, I'm going to come out with an article about off-season throwing programs that I've written, and a lot of that is just information that I've taken and put together from different places, because these seem like the best outlets and the most successful to me, so why not combine them all? So then what happens? I've been following these videos online for years. I come into you and I'm not where I should be. I'm not at square one, but I'm sure as hell not, my body is not right from just following what I see on the computer. So how are you getting the most out of that?
How hard did you throw?
How hard did I throw? When are we asking?
This past season.
I was anywhere upper 80s, low 90s, and then towards the middle end of the year bumped up to mid 90s.
So it did work then.
So it did work.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's
so
true. So there were improvements.
Right. So
and this was the first time I've ever invested in, not like yoga, but mobility, and I think that was a big thing too.
Right, of course.
Which helped me put my body in positions in ways that I wanted it to. But then from learning from sitting down with Andrew and seeing how the way that the body wants to work in terms of baseball, I'm still nowhere near where I want to be.
Right.
So how do they get there? It worked for me, then.
I mean, that's a tough question, because
maybe no one has the answer.
Right, but I mean, you don't really have the answer, but that's why I think it's the job of the strength coaches that are in that teaching realm, that they need to put out more content. So I think putting out more content, and just understanding and just trying to learn and doing stuff in the most optimal way. Because everybody should be doing a back to wall shoulder flexion. Everybody should be doing some type of wall side variation.
Yeah.
There's no wall side variation that is going to be okay, this person, but I mean there is, but there isn't. But everybody realistically should be doing some type of wall side or some type of cuff work or some type of this and some type of that. So, I mean, to more individualize, you're going to have to see a strength coach. But at the same time, there are certain things that every single person could do on a regular basis that is going to be tailored to everybody. I mean, take a look at your program, take a look at Luke's, take a look at Brandon's, take a look at Sam's, take a look at Vianna's. You got kids from 24, 23, 17, and a 13-year-old softball player that throws absolute fuzz. And they're all doing wall slide. They're all doing some type of variation of wall slide. So, there's certain things that people could do every single day. But again, if you take accountability and you try to learn on your own and you try to ask questions, you're going to find the answers. But if you don't ask the questions, you won't find the answers.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And another thing, none of us are going to have the answer to this, but how is this realm of off-season training, in-season training, is it going to become so big? I think it is, that eventually that price might have to go down a little bit for what these kind of programs and what this kind of one-on-one training costs, or else there's always going to be a big group of people that are never going to be able to get into someone like you or get in to see someone like Eric. So hopefully it just continues to grow, where in a few years from now, where we see a trend where maybe we have a surplus in strength and conditioning coaches who are as qualified and skilled as you and Eric are, and by having that and more players that want to get better in this aspect, maybe we can see the price come down a little bit, and then you see more youth players and more guys that can come in and do something like this, because these programs are the best of the best, and they are sure as hell worth every dime, but unfortunately they are not able to cater to everyone's pockets. So so that's interesting. I want to get into a little bit more body training type stuff. So what aspect of training do you believe that baseball players neglect the most? People who aren't seeing someone like you.
Right. So plane specific movements, I think, is
mean?
Big. So the body moves in 3 planes: sagittal, so front to back; frontal, side to side; then transverse is rotational. And almost every single person that I've met down here so far has never done anything rotational or side to side. But baseball pitching and baseball hitting is side-to-side movement. Yeah. So it's in the frontal and the transverse plane. So I met a lot of people that like to do, all those cleans, and they do squats, and they do all this other stuff. And it's good and it gets you strong, but there's no translation from that plane to frontal plane or transverse plane. So throwing medicine balls like you're hitting, throwing medicine balls like you're pitching, hide-ins, so lateral bounds, lateral squat or lateral side squats, kettlebell lateral lunge, just certain things like that, like more specific to the baseball plane movement that it's in, I think is something that we neglect, because I was one as well. If you can't lunge side to side and then load into your hip, how do you expect to do it on a baseball mound? So I think that's something that a lot of people in baseball neglect, is just understanding that we're not moving forward and backwards, we're moving side to sides and we're rotating.
Yep. Okay. I like that. And another thing that I want to eventually talk to you about that we can release something on in the future is that back hip versus front leg push pull.
Right.
I mean, I've really kind of learned a lot about that this year, the whole front leg hyperextending, back leg, back hip driving. But it's when that back hip drives, it's when that knee is out kind of over your back foot. Mm-hmm. When should that all start to drive forward? And when I thought it was, the more I've looked at it, the more I've seen video, the more I've learned about how the body works, the more I realize that I'm wrong and I'm so far away from where I need to be. And I'll say,
cool. It's good news.
And I'll say, this will speak to this man's credibility. I was with him working out the other day, no warm up, nothing. I'm throwing into the net after I do my full warm up, full medicine ball routine before my lift. This man takes the ball, throws it into the net, and we'll post this picture of him somewhere just to show that not only can he talk it, he can do it, and he can show it, but it was almost like what I want to get out of my body. It was boom, right there, no warm-up, no nothing, did it in 2 throws, doesn't play baseball anymore. And I need to post this picture because this is almost a perfect spot-on image of where I would like to try to get every single pitcher that I see to be. Maybe a little bit too wide, like we've said, but you're extremely flexible.
I'm really loose, yeah. So I think, you gotta be able to walk the walk instead of just talking the talk. So when I was in New Jersey, it was really funny. Because, and this is something that Eric just talked about in his podcast, what you listen to seems legit.
Yeah.
Take a listen to it, it's really good. But, the guy who was interviewing him said, hey, do people respond differently now than they did, 5-6 years ago from your program? And he goes, yeah, basically people didn't really believe in what I do now back then, and now they're all advocates of me and they love it. And that's a troublesome thing that I had in New Jersey when I first started, was nobody really believed in this type of lifting because it was mobility, it was correctives, and then it was lifting weights. Everybody thought that only thing I need to do is just pick up heavy weights, squat 500 pounds, leg press 500. So what I did was I said, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to show you guys that you're all wrong and that I'm right, and that I want to show you that I can still throw gas. So I stopped playing baseball March 2016, and in March 2017 I hit 93, 94, and I was throwing strikes for 90 to 92. And I put it on social media, and that opened up a lot of eyes, and they're like, oh, holy moly, Andrew can do it, and it did work. So one of our coaches in the organization that we worked with, Gallagher Baseball, thought it was really funny. He started promoting me because it was like, well, if Andrew did it to show you it worked, then it will work. Because again, I had 2 elbow surgeries, my shoulder's gone, my lower back's gone, and we were throwing yesterday, and I still like to let it loose. I still like to let it eat, and I have fun doing it because if I go in and you said, to those players yesterday, hey, this is Andrew, he knows a lot. If he tells you anything, listen to him. That can speak volumes, but if I literally go out and I throw, and I can show everybody that at 24, I still can light up the gun, they're going to be like, holy moly, he's not lying. So exactly, right. So it's always good to kind of go out there and just show people that, I can still throw hard because I do the stuff to maintain my body, because I know at the end of the day that if I don't, I'm going to feel miserable, because that's how I felt for a long time. I mean, I had 2 elbow surgeries before I was 21 years old.
Now, I don't know if you came to that realization on your own, but hey, Eric, I know Cressy wasn't a baseball player,
right?
Tennis, soccer, also, but you look up, you've seen him in person. I would see videos of him, and he does everything that baseball players can do, and does it way better. His body looks way better when he does it.
Eric,
deadlifts the house. I don't know if he can throw, but he's as close to being able to do what baseball players need to do, and then he can talk it, and he sure as hell can walk it.
Right.
Maybe just not throwing a baseball, but that's not his fault. He didn't play baseball.
Right. Yeah, so that's something else in the internship in Florida that I got really benefit from, and then same thing in New Jersey, and then same thing here too. But more or less a lot in Cressy was I was one of 162 applicants to apply for that internship in the summer. 11 were accepted, so I was one of 11 accepted. 6 were in Massachusetts, 5 were in Florida. So my Florida program, it was Andrew Lysy, he was a college baseball player. You have
that's you.
That's me. You have Jason Neal, who was one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. He was at IFAST, so he worked with all the PRI guys. Was one of the biggest perkins in the world. I had Emma Regenbaum, who was at the top of her class. She goes to the University of Florida. She's in PT school. You know, Drew and Derek, who just were extremely smart. Derek went on to Exos and interned there later, and then Dew went on to work at PEP, and they both work there now, and they trained like James Harrison and stuff like that. So I was around the smartest people in the entire world, but I was the only baseball player. So I automatically won because I gained that trust between the baseball players, even if I was wrong. And I always talk to Emma about that, and she's like, I don't understand why people listen to you. I'm like, because I have that baseball background, and I can relate to them. So I think, that's something else that's really important, is a lot of people kind of believe in me because I was there, I lived it, I had that surgery, I had success, I had failures, but I actually lived what everybody else is trying to go through. So I think that's huge in the aspect of what I do now, is because I do work with a lot of pitchers.
Yeah. Okay. So I got 2 more questions I wanted to ask you, and we'll take a quick break, change topic a little bit, and that will be all. But I wanted to say, obviously your knowledge of human anatomy and then linking up with baseball is just absolutely incredible, and I hope to just scratch the surface that someday, because I think it would help me a lot in everyday life, and it sure as hell would help me in baseball. So I wanted to ask about how, in terms of that, you suggest baseball players going and learning about it on their own. Obviously, research it on your own and all the content that's out there, but we've pretty much covered that, so we can move on past that one. But one more thing I want to ask before we take a break is a little bit different, but definitely one of your strengths, I think we've touched on a little bit actually, is your confidence, and that goes hand in hand with your knowledge of how the body works and then translating that to baseball. When did you become so confident in what you know? Because you can only teach so well, and then if you don't believe in what you're teaching, of course you've seen it work. Eric working with major leaguers, top Cy Young Award winners, of course that's gonna help you feel a little bit better. But what made you confident in this content, teaching this content, showing this content, all of that? How did you gain that level of confidence and then start to use it in terms of training? Because that's a very positive attribute that I have noticed in you. It's not arrogance, it's definitely confidence.
Yeah. So when I came back from my internship, I just had so much information in my head, and so many questions. I was like almost overwhelmed with information. I didn't have all the answers. I mean, I still don't. Obviously, it's the best part about the industry is you're never gonna know everything. So we're just always continuing to learn. So when I came back from my internship, I had a lot of questions and a lot of information, but I didn't have anybody to ask because I was by myself. So when I started to kind of gain more athletes and I needed more help, I got a hold of two of the most awesome people that I would say are the most influential people in my life, Derek Kimbor and Connor Brew, and we worked together for a good, close to 15 months. And Connor and Derek are just so smart, and they just kind of put the icing on the cake for me. So I think just being around people that are smarter than you and being around people that you guys can all relay information off of and question each other. I mean, there were times where we would have in-services and me and Connor or me and Derek, we would just get after, like not yelling at each other, but fighting ideas back and forth, and we came to that conclusion, well, okay, here's what we're going to do, and we tested it out and it worked. Mm-hmm. So I think being around a lot of, not only the Cressy Sports Performance family, but another former intern, and then Derek, who was at Parabolic and is going to do his own thing with the more baseball players now, but being around really, really intelligent people that just continue to help me grow and continue to help me learn kind of put the icing on the cake. And again, like I said, they pushed me as hard as I pushed them. I wasn't one to study much in college and high school. I kind of was always the one that would do well without really studying. But then they pushed me to want to know more because I didn't want to be the only one there that didn't know what they were talking about when they were conversing. So Connor pushed me. I learned a lot. I started to read books about anatomy, try to understand that. And then Derek pushed me a ton too. When it comes down to it, Derek's 6 foot, 195 pounds. He was deadlifting sumo deadlift 500 pounds. So they know how to get you strong. They know how to keep you healthy. And I just being around those two people just really, really put the icing on the cake for me. And I think that's one of the biggest influences. Those two people are one of the biggest influences in my career. So
okay, great. For the remaining 3, 4, 5 questions that we have, we'll see where this takes us. Should be a few of a little bit different topics than what we've touched on so far. So first, this will probably be the one that's most relevant to what we were talking about. Something that Matthew feels really strongly about and wanted me to ask you. Matthew is my brother. I like to call him the CEO and founder of this, as much as he wants to call us co-founders of Students of the Game. He's the CEO. Matthew believes, in terms of training, there is no such thing as a sport-specific exercise. Even exercise that you might say, this is for baseball, they're going to apply to some other sport. He believes in movement and that we are all movers in some type of way. The future of sports training, he believes, is moving into this direction. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think? Agree, disagree?
I agree. And I hope so for that matter, because that'd be really cool to kind of see more of this type of training take off, because I do see the benefit of it. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that Connor Brew mentioned when we were doing an in-service about coaching and programming is there's realistically no possible way to replicate a sports type of performance, right? So if I say, hey, we're going to train for soccer, there's no way I can replicate your adrenaline. There's no way I can replicate the variability of, okay, well, this guy might come up to you, but he might not. Like, you don't know exactly what's going on. You can't replicate the variability of the field. You can't replicate the variability of all the attendees that are there screaming in your face. So in that perspective, yes, I believe that you really can't train sport specific. I think you just need to learn how to move. Every movement has hinging, every movement has pulling, every sport has pushing, every sport has this, every sport has that. And if you take a look at majority of the sports, you have volleyball, you have lacrosse, you have golf, you have baseball. They're all rotational. Their shoulders externally rotate. They pretty much do the same things, just in different areas. So you need to have good shoulders. You need to have strong hips. You need to be able to push through the ground. You need to be able to absorb force. You need to be able to stop yourself. So I think there's certain movements that are more geared towards certain sports, but I think in reality there is no such thing as sports-specific movement.
That's great. Yeah. So interesting. Okay, and you would know this because you haven't trained just baseball players. Right. Olympic gold medalists. Yep. What football players did you train?
So in Florida there was some football players that were trying out for like UCF. It's actually really cool. Eric programs for the kicker for the Atlanta Hawks. So last year he had Falcons, yeah, sorry. He
knows more than just baseball.
Yes, right? I played basketball, I played football, I played baseball, but he programs for the kicker, and I met him last year. It was pretty cool. So again, movement's movement. He had tight hamstrings, he had lower back issues. Now he kicks the ball as far as anybody else does.
Really?
And then in New Jersey, we worked with some college football players. Nobody like really too big.
Yeah.
But we try to get into it. Derek has a really good background in football. He works for Parabolic in New Jersey, which is where the Rutgers players go, where the Giants and the Jets players go. So he was more geared towards that, but we just didn't get into that realm because we were so baseball specific. But at the same time, it's all the same.
What do you see? Football, those are two drastically different sports. Basketball, I think you need a lot more of the cardio, stamina type stuff. I'm sure there's plenty of overlap in training. Football versus baseball, biggest difference, like yeah, you said there's a lot of overlap, but what is the biggest discrepancy between the two?
Right. Well, I would say you train a quarterback the same way you train a pitcher.
Okay. Not a quarterback.
Right.
Yeah,
You would train a wide receiver the way you would train like a soccer player. They need to learn how to stop. They need to learn how to jump, change directions. They need to learn how to stop, change direction, jump all simultaneously without stopping and then hurting themselves. So I think that's a good way to train those types of athletes, cornerbacks, safeties as well. And then you have just the linemen who just move forward and backwards. So those guys are the ones that need the heavy bench. They need the heavy squat. They need the heavy press. They need to push heavy sleds. So I think based off the sport and the position, you can kind of get more specific into that. But I think everybody should move. I mean, if you take a look at linemen, they have some of the fastest, quickest feet. So they still move really, really well, even if it's just forward and backwards. But again, you wouldn't train a quarterback the same way you train a lineman who's a quarterback's trying to move with a bunch of variability, get their arm up, throw a ball, and a lineman just going back and forth. So
interesting. Okay. Here we go. Let's dive into the next topic here. Some research that you conduct. Where are we? What are you currently researching to develop as a strength and conditioning coach?
So right now, I don't actually have my certified strength and conditioning specialist, so I'm studying for that. It's something that I want to do. It's something that Glenn is helping me accomplish, who's the founder of RVA. He's the guy that I work for.
Athletes,
yep. And that's something that I'm studying for right now. Like I said, I'm not a good test taker, so I'm really, really putting a lot of work into that. It's about a 5-hour test. The book is 26 chapters, so I'm just trying to go through that. And then in the spare time, I'm reading a few books. I read The Subtle Art of Not Giving excuse my language, and it was the best book I've ever read because it just really zoned in on being you and understanding that in reality, nobody really cares about you besides you, so just do what you want to do, and that's something for me that's really, really important. Trail Guide to the Human Body is one of my favorite books. I started it when I was in New Jersey, and then the CSCS came up, and I wanted to focus more on that, so I'm going back and forth between that, but that's one of the best anatomy books that I've ever read. It kind of tells you what each muscle should do. It breaks the trap up, and there's just a chapter on the trap, there's a chapter on the shoulders, there's a chapter on the extensive movements of the shoulder, so it gets really, really good into the anatomy and then the functional anatomy of the movement. And then I was just telling you while we were off scene that for Christmas I asked for an anatomy coloring book because, again, if I can color in the pieces of what each thing does, I'll know a little bit more about where it inserts and where the origin is and where it connects and what it moves. So I think for me,
every baseball player should invest in that, and I'm going to do it myself.
Yes,
so.
It's just understanding the body and just the anatomy. I think that's important. And then there's some other books that I want to read this year. Conscious Coaching is one that I really want to read because understanding how to coach each individual and how to get the most optimal results the fastest. Just continue to learn. I've never really read books before now, and I love it because I'm still learning. So those are kind of what I'm researching, but right now I plan on taking the CSCS around February or March, so that's kind of what I'm really focusing on.
Have you conducted any research, any studies of your own, taken an athlete, experimented on something with them, experimented with something like on something like yourself?
Right, so I've definitely done it on myself, not like research where it's like publicized, but I do have pictures and videos of before and after for mechanics with my brother. My brother is one of the people I like to show off the most. He went from
tell us about him.
So he was a fresh throws the crap out of the ball now, didn't before. So like I said, when I was in college, I was 6 foot, 95 pounds, and I was throwing anywhere between 88, 91, 92, and then when I was done, I was up to 93, 94, and he's 6'3". He has not nearly the injury history that I does. He's 19 years old, and when I saw him last year, me and my dad went to one of his games at Shippensburg. He plays Division II Shippensburg, which is in the PSAC. He was 78 to 81, and his mechanics were just awful. And he just moved like crap, and he had no idea where the ball was going. He would leave it up, he would leave it down, he'd be inconsistent. So he came live with me this summer when I was in New Jersey. We programmed for 3 straight months. He threw once a week for one of my good friends, Brett Miller, who was the Legion coach for Allentown Legion, and he played there. And I have pictures before, during, and then after of his mechanics drastically changing because he got strong enough to put himself in that position. So he went from 78 to 81 to throwing 94 this past fall. It was like consistently 88 to 92 consistently rating. So he didn't really like to talk about himself, but I like to talk about him because he worked hard. And he's just gigantic. He's massive. He's putting on weight. He was 170 pounds and he left 186. I think he's closer to 190 now after this past month. So I have progress pictures that I can always show you guys. I have before videos, I have after videos, I have velocity videos. So you'll see his front side looks a little bit stiffer towards the end. His release point got more out front towards the end of the summer. He was able to stay behind the ball a little bit better instead of moving his head forward. So I have those progress pictures. They're not actual like research studies, but those are. Yeah. And then I have them with me as well because I was somebody who would land and my back would be parallel to the ground, my chest would be up to the roof. Yeah. And now I have pictures of me when I land. I'm pretty much just as tall as I can be, but again, it's not something that I changed on the mound. It's something that I changed in the gym. I got just stronger, strong enough to put myself in a good position.
And that was my next question. So this is something we're going to show. I mean, I'm going to show my before and after pictures with the guys from the Mid-Atlantic Orioles scout team that I'm working with. I want to see yours. I want to see mine. I want to see my brothers. I want to see your brothers.
Right.
Every picture that I've worked with, whoever you've worked with, and there's been changes, we're going to show that because I think that only enhances the credibility.
Right.
But if you can show what there was before and what the after and what the product is now, I think that speaks to what you have to offer for athletes all around the country in the Richmond, Virginia area. So this is similar, or this is kind of along the same research topic. If you think we've already covered it, that's fine. We can move on. But how open-minded are you when you are conducting research? So you said you haven't done your own study, but you've had an athlete research to me. I mean, you had an athlete for a period of time, and they were something, they did something, and it made them into something else. So that's enough right there to speak towards research, I believe. And you see someone on Twitter like Kyle Bodie with Driveline, he's citing javelin throwers, shot put throwers, and other high-level throwers in other sports, and kind of tying that into pitching. Do you look outside of the baseball world when you're looking into research? Yeah, you obviously do because of anatomy and all that. Right, anything else that plays a role?
See, not really though. So I'm like so focused on like what's gonna help me get better, and like right now for me it's understanding more anatomy that I don't really take a look at Kyle Bodie. I'm sure he's got a ton of credibility, but for me, I don't want to look at 65 different things at once. I'd rather zone in and really understand one thing and then try to progress from there. So I do take a look at some things on the internet. Sometimes I try to stay away from it. Sometimes I try to understand it. Sometimes I try to say, hey, this is what I do. But I think it's just best to just focus on what you're trying to focus on and just get better at that. So like I said, for me right now, it's understanding anatomy to the point where all I know is anatomy. And then I can take what Kyle Bodie knows and I can understand a little bit better. But if I don't understand what actually goes on, I'll never actually really understand what Kyle Bodie's trying to say.
I see, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Next, last 2 questions. We're going to talk about RVA here a little bit. Now, RVA is the term that people here use to describe Richmond, Virginia. So you said before RVA when you were describing where you work.
Right.
He does not work at RVA or for RVA. He works for RVA Athletes. Yeah. This is a facility out in Powhatan. Hopefully trying to...
Closer to Midlothian, though. It's more or less in Midlothian.
Yeah.
I know people think that Powhatan is far away.
It seems far away, but it's really not, especially for us from the Northeast. 30 minutes to drive for a workout, 25 minutes when you can get something as top level as this is outstanding. But they're located out in Powhatan right now, definitely looking at places to move, maybe a little bit closer to the city to appeal to more athletes. But it's a great location. Every time I'm there's plenty of kids. Training from ages as young as I've seen, I'm sure 7, 8 years old, up to my age, and there's been some older men there as well. So they're attracting many different people and they're looking to move. But RVA Athletes in Powhatan is where Andrew is. Why there? How did you choose that facility? Because I know you've had your eye on Richmond for a while.
Right.
You have an aunt and uncle down here. Your mom and dad moved here to Richmond last year. So you've had your eye on this area for a while. There's no Cressy interns in this area.
Right.
You're the first one to be down here. So why Richmond and why RVA Athletes?
So why Richmond to start off? Basically, I mean, it goes twofold. I've always wanted to live down here because I've always literally loved it down here. Every time I used to visit my aunt and uncle, I would just be like, this is where I want to live. I know I've
Played
done
at Randolph-Macon.
Yep, I played at Randolph-Macon, so I've been around here for, I would say, the last 8 to 10 years, just not consistently, but here and there. It's beautiful. People are so much nicer. I'm from New Jersey, so people are kind of, tell you blunt to the point, and they don't really care how you feel, but... No, so I've done a lot of research. I knew that there was a lot of good baseball, untapped potential down here, and I knew, again, that there wasn't a former Cressy intern, so I figured it would be cool to kind of set up shop. And then another thing that's really funny, too, is you don't realize how important your parents are until you live by yourself and you don't really have the help of your parents. So coming down here was... I wanted to be around more athletes that didn't have the knowledge that I had, and I could help them out, and I also wanted to be a little bit closer to my parents. And then why RVA Athletes and why Glenn is... So,
Glenn is his boss. What is Glenn's last name?
Pfluger.
And what's Glenn's background?
So he played soccer. He was a wrestler. He went to Slippery Rock University where he studied health and exercise science. He was a bodybuilder, competed in bodybuilding. Then he got his master's degree in health and exercise science, I believe, as well. I came down here and I met a few people, and it was more or less like some baseball organizations, and I just didn't want to do a baseball organization because I just knew that it wouldn't be growth. I had, not that I had trouble in New Jersey. Baseball facility, yeah. Not that I had trouble in New Jersey, but, I have my ways to go about things, and other coaches have their ways, and I'm going off of anatomy, and again, they're going off of this is what I did, so let's do it. So it was always trying to fight back and forth, and I just didn't want that. So when
that doesn't mean, though, real quick, that doesn't mean that he thinks that you're in there and you're working with a pitching coach. It's not that he might think the pitching coach is wrong. It's what happens when Andrew's telling this kid to feel this, but then his pitching coach wants him to feel something completely different, and then the kid is so lost that he's got two different things to work on at once. Then what is he actually getting out of it?
It's just too, that's like we were talking about before, too many cues kind of confuses the athlete. So I kind of wanted to just be in strength and conditioning. I didn't want to necessarily just be with baseball. My aunt and uncle's neighbor, Rachel and Brian, their daughters went to Glenn because they had some lower back and hamstring issues, and they kind of set me up to meet him. And I called him one day and I'm like, hey Glenn, here's the situation. My name's Andrew Lysy. I'd love to come and meet you. I worked with Eric and the CSP internship and this and that, and we kind of met, and like almost immediately we meshed and we molded together. And I knew that he was somebody that I could grow with because he specializes in soccer, and I specialize in baseball. And I don't know anything about soccer. He doesn't really know much about baseball, so we could mold the two together and be really, really successful.
But he knows how to lift.
Yes, he does know how to lift. He knows how to get strong. He just is absolutely... It was really funny. I think, was it maybe John or maybe Luke? They did a reverse lunge and they had trouble, and Glenn just went over and he just repped it out. Yeah. And it was funny because he is really strong. So and
he's also half my size.
Right.
So.
Yeah. He's short. I'd be like 5'9", maybe like 5'7".
Strong as can be.
Yep. But it was something that I just felt like I could grow with, and I felt like I could learn from, and that we could mold our two together. So he did a lot of group training, and I did a lot of individual training, individualization. So I was like, hey, can we mesh the two together and just find just a really, really good program? And he was like, yeah. So that's what we're trying to do right now, is we're trying to figure out that happy medium between having the youth in the group training and the elderly, the adult, the teenagers, the college athletes, and the older people on their own program. So we're trying to figure out that right now, but it's just something that almost immediately I knew I'd have more success with than just being on my own or being with the baseball organization. Mm-hmm. He's something that I really, really felt that together we could grow and be really, really powerful and impactful. Yeah, and again, everybody loved him. So I think that's another thing with me is I don't really care how knowledgeable you are, how many results you have. If the athletes don't love you, they're not going to be able to actually benefit. So I went and met one of the athletes that he has in their techs. His mom runs a CrossFit gym across the hall, and I went and met her, and I met and saw the facility, and she said, hey, I want to tell you something, but when we go over like our journal at night with Tex, he's maybe like 10 or 12 years old. She said, hey, who is one of the biggest mentors, most impactful people in your life? And he wrote down Glenn, and I was like, that's powerful. That's somebody who I want to be around, because that's somebody that's going to get the most out of all these kids and get the most out of it. It's not just about learning and doing it the right way. It's about how much you really care about those athletes, and Glenn really, really cares. And I think that's something that really resonated with me, and like another reason why I wanted to be there, because it wasn't just about the business. It was, these kids need to leave here smiling and stay happy and want to come back, because this could be the best hour to hour and a half that they come in during the entire day. So what they look forward to the most, we got to make sure that that's how they leave. And for him to be so like receptive and wanting to learn just speaks volumes, because that's hard.
He's a soccer bodybuilder now. All he wants to do is learn about baseball.
Up and shoulders, because he knows that we could be impactful and powerful. So he's an awesome guy. I'm very, very lucky.
Yeah. So now this is Andrew's third week or so here. I'm trying as much as possible to help him build his network in the Richmond area. There's plenty, like he said, of talent, untapped talent in the Richmond area. I wish I could help my University of Richmond former teammates, current team that's there now. I wish I could get those guys to come in, but obviously they're a little bit further away. Season's about to start. Your best networking tool is going to be what happens with these guys and how we continue to show that progression, and then we need to find a way to broadcast. So that's where we need your help. Anybody who's following, anybody who's watching, anybody who's listening. Up here we have Andrew's own personal social media handle, so if you could go ahead, give him a follow. There's plenty of interesting content on there. I hope to have him send us little clips maybe once a week explaining different parts of how the body works in terms of pitching, hitting, whatever it may be, and I think helpful videos that will really help younger athletes benefit. And then again, you have my name up here. You can follow our website, or you can follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Students of T Game, OFT Game, and our website is studentsotgame.com. So I apologize for the different handles there, but these were taken, so this is all we can do. And this is from Matthew and I, Students of the Game, our first on-camera interview, signing out. Anything else you want to say?
No, I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. This is my first time ever doing something like this, so I hope I gave you guys information that you needed. If not, again, feel free to reach out to John, his brother Matt, and myself, because we have a bunch of information and we're just trying to change the world. So that's our information. DM me, whatever you want to do. I'll be waiting for you guys to hear from you. So thanks for having us.
All right, thanks guys.